Welcome to Back in the Box. We are two British women in our 50s and we're born into the South Asian culture, and we're here to discuss our life experiences and how we've been placed in a box and how we've broken out of it and the impact of it on both of us. So,
join us on Lifting That Lid. Welcome to our first episode, and we're going to dive right at the beginning of our childhood and school years.
So before we do that then, Z, let's try and define what it means to us to be back in the box. What does it mean to you?
Goodness, you know what? When I actually hear this word, it sends shivers down my back. Yeah, it makes me grit my teeth. It makes me go, oh. I know it's not so much like when someone says it directly to me. I think for me, it's more the indirect messages that have come to me. And I think it's those ones that kind of hurt the most because they just seep in and they just lay with me. So for me, it's the indirect way of people telling me to be in that box. How about you?
I think for me, Back in the Box sort of reminds me a little bit of a Jack in the Box. This cartoon puppet is inside the box, it comes out and it's like, whoa, here I am. And some of the people are like, oh, really excited by it. And other people are like, oh, that is scary. We don't want to see this. And it's quite a good analogy in a way, isn't it? Because actually when people break out of that box, like the Jack in the Box, some people think, yeah, this is great. We're empowered. We want to be championed. And other times people think, oh, that's scary. That's going to be a change. Put it back in its box again. We don't want to know. That's going to change us.
Yeah, I have to admit that Jack in the Box used to scare the hell out of me. It used to look like something out of a horror show. So I can totally get why people get scared by Jack in the Box. So yeah, totally great analogy there.
Yeah, definitely. I think, it's one that we really do think about. People are scared of change, aren't they? That's what actually sometimes leads to them putting us back in that box because of their own fears rather than us and what we're doing.
Absolutely. And you know what? I think to give some narrative in terms of the background, it'd be good for people to understand our backgrounds and sort of born into South Asian culture. So for me, I was literally one of six, born into a Pakistani family. So there was a year difference between each and one of us. So two boys on either end. I was the eldest girl in a Muslim household. Do I need to say any more? Eldest girl in a Muslim household. That is it. You literally can do no wrong. You are the ambassador.
I mean, you must have been top dog in that house.
I literally was. You know what? I loved being a good girl. I was like, this brilliant role model, and I relished it. I loved being great.
Goody two shoes, Miss Goody two shoes.
Totally goody shoes. I love that halo effect on me. I was born into that role, and I loved being into that role. So there wasn't too much I could do wrong. And so for me, breaking out the box, it wasn't on my radar, and it wasn't something that I was kind of eager to do either, basically. I mean, how about you? What's your family background?
So my parents came over from India in the late 60s, and I'm again born here, British born, and very much grew up in that first generation where not only our parents, but we were learning to be in two cultures and, with traditions and trying to manage that within a new country with other cultures. And that in itself caused issues, but also a celebration of other things as well, and a mixing of cultures, but sometimes a clash of cultures, which led to then those subliminal messages about trying to keep us in the South Asian, Indian, for me, box. Yeah, it's a really interesting time period, and it affects us, doesn't it, when we're going forward in life?
Yeah, 100%. You know what childhood does? And I think people don't realise is kind of the experiences at childhood that kind of sort of make you the person. So if we kind of dive into it then, let's get straight into our episode. Let's go straight into those stories. What's the first recollection you actually have? Maybe sort of relating it to the school years, kind of like back into primary school, visualise yourself as a little mini cute, basically in primary school. Did you have any experiences back then?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I think it's really important. Now, we do always go back to our childhood because childhood leads us and teaches us certain things, doesn't it? So, my first experience, whoa, well, it was when I was about 8 or 9 at primary school. There I was crushing on this boy, and he was crushing on me. You know, we'd follow each other around on the playground, hold hands, sit on the carpet together.
Oh my God, that's so cute. I can't believe. I can believe you doing that sort of thing. So I can totally visualize you doing that. That's so sweet.
So it was a really cute little thing, and I remember once he bought me a sweet ring. Do you remember those rings that you could buy from the candy shops, and they were only like
Yeah.
1p sweets?
Oh my God, that is like total marriage material. 100% marriage material.
That's it. So there he was with his sweet ring, putting it on my finger, ring on my finger. You know, will you be my girlfriend? Of course. I will be your girlfriend. So there I am, feeling so happy. And that evening, go back home. We're having our dinner. My parents, my siblings, we're all sitting together, eating away. And I'm thinking, I've got to share this great news. It's made me so happy. Guess what? I've got a boyfriend. And then deathly silence. My dad just stopped eating mid bite of his chapati and sabji.
That's so funny. That must have taken a lot for him to stop eating. You know, men and their food, that is precious.
Exactly. So he then just stopped eating. He was like, Mere ਘਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੋਈ boyfriend ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦੇ. So in my house, there are no boyfriends. ਇਹ ਕੁੜੀ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕੀ ਕਹਿੰਦੀ ਆ? And what is this girl saying to us? ਇਹ boyfriend ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੀ ਆ? And he's talking to my mum saying, she's telling us about a boyfriend. ਸਾਡੇ culture ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ boyfriend ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦੇ. In our culture, there's no boyfriend. So I was like, wow, what is he on about? You know, all the other girls, you know, they do this. What's wrong with that? Not thinking about the colour of my skin or, you know, which culture I'm on, just thinking it's normal. And then I said, well, you know, Dad, when in Rome, do as the Romans do.
Oh my God, you know what? At 8 years old, you were 8, yeah? And you were saying that when in Rome, you know, who does that? Like, what kind of bright kid were you, to be honest with you? I wouldn't even know where Rome was, let alone say that word Rome. That's so funny.
I don't know where I heard that phrase. Maybe we were learning about Romans at the time. But, well, so I said, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Teri kuri ne minnu Roman devare gal kitti a. Your daughter's spoken to me about Romans. ਅਸੀਂ ਨਹੀਂ Roman ਹੈਗੇ. We are not Romans. ਅਸੀਂ Indian ਆ. We are Indians. ਇਸ ਘਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੇ ਨਹੀਂ Roman ਬਣਨਾ ਹੈਗਾ. Nobody is going to be a Roman in our house. And wow. I mean, he just had a huge rant about it after that. And it was so like, wow, this is alien to me. What is the big deal? Why is he getting so worked up about this? You know, and yeah, I think that was my first experience of like thinking, do you know what? I might be going into school and there's all these people, you know, I lived in a very predominantly white area. And actually, no, I'm not the same as them. I am different. I'm not allowed to do that. So that was a huge first shock and realization. Oh, I'm not quite the same as everybody else. And the expectations for me are not the same. What about for you, Zazie?
Oh, you know what? You know, it's funny when you mentioned about the boyfriends because, you know, as a Muslim girl, there is no way we were allowed to have boyfriends whatsoever. If we had a mention of a boy, it was like, you are dead to me.
Yeah, I think I nearly died that time when I said that to my dad, to be fair.
But I actually knew I was going to be dead.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? I think even in Indian culture, just the same, it was like boyfriends are forbidden, aren't they? Don't even talk about boys.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I think it was so ingrained with me. Like, I did not even go there. Yeah, it was just like, you are dead. We will kill you. And I knew for a while they would ship me off to Pakistan, and I will be in pieces. So I was just like, there is no way. That fear was instilled in me. It's funny when you said the boyfriend. I kind of sort of remember. I was kind of like, end of primary school, so it probably would have been about 9 years old, yeah. And we had one of those wooden desks. You remember those old wooden desks, yeah, that you lift up. And there was this letter in there, and it must have been like Valentine's Day. I definitely think it was Valentine's Day. And there was a note in there, and it said something. I can't rightly remember. My memory's so bad. I can't remember what I did last week, let alone what happened like 40 years ago. So it was literally like, I think you're pretty, or I like you. Oh my gosh, when I saw that letter and I read it, I was kind of like mortified, literally mortified. I was like, oh my gosh, a boy wrote this. What the hell? I'm going to die. I'm going to kill that boy. I'm going to murder him. So there's no trace that someone actually wrote that to me. And the thought of it getting out for my parents to even know about it, it was just devastating. Literally going overtime in terms of like, how do I destroy the letter? How do I not let anyone know? There's just no way that could actually be part of me. I would never even dare mention the fact that I had a boyfriend or that. No way. Or even a letter, or even the fact that I read words that a boy said to me. I couldn't even utter those words. But I think like the first time I actually knew the fact that there were lines set for me. So there were expectations. So with the box where you had the 4 lines going across to draw the box, that was me. I was the box. Being the eldest girl, I was that box.
Do you mean you were square, Z?
I was... you know what though? I was square and I loved it. Be it square, bit of good tea shoes, whatever you want to call it. I absolutely relished being square. I was put on a pedestal. I was kind of like the ambassador for the family. I was that shining star. I could do no wrong, and I relished it. I took on that role. I was the best role model in that whole family. I was the best role model in that town.
You definitely had that halo shining there, didn't you?
I definitely did. And I kept it shining for a long time. Nobody was going to take that away from me. But yeah, for me, it's just like I could not step out of those 4 lines. I knew then when that fear was inside me, that was the first time I knew it was that indirect, like, those lines were set. That box was formed. But I was quite happy. I was like, you know what? I love these 4 lines. I love this box. Cool. I'm happy staying in this box.
Yeah.
But as we progressed, did it change, do you think, when you kind of progressed for primary school, coming into more of our teenage years? Did that sort of change slightly?
Yeah, I think when we leave primary school, we're sort of in a little bit of a bubble, and then we go to secondary school, and actually we have more autonomy and a bit more freedom from our parents as well. That's how I thought about it. I was like, woohoo! I'm in secondary school, great. But yeah, it was actually like living 2 lives for me. That's how I think and remember it. There was one life at home, that was like Indian culture, must speak in Punjabi, must do this, must have roti and sabji every day, chapatis and curry every day, and then be a certain way. And then at school it was like freedom, yeah, I'm going to enjoy myself. But then, interestingly, even at school, though, at that time, racism was quite rife. And I remember being called the P word and, told to go back home. And I'm like, do you think I'm ET or something? But like, it was being segregated and made to feel a bit on the outside. I didn't allow it to, because I wanted to enjoy my freedom away from where I felt very much, constrained at home. And I remember being a right prankster at school and just doing all sorts of things. But anyway, less about that. And but it was a really interesting time, just feeling like I was living 2 different lives. And then I also went to a school in India. So that was actually quite interesting as a parallel to it. And I went there, I was in Punjab, and my parents had taught me how to read and write Hindi, And so I went and I was in a class there, you know, they were all like dictation, writing really quickly. I'm like, I can't even flip in write that fast. I can't even remember the words I've got to write. And on top of that, we had to do English, which I loved, obviously. And then we also did Punjabi. So there were 3 languages that we were studying there. I remember taking all my books in this bag. It felt like I was carrying this heavy suitcase on my back to school and home again every day. And just being there, I remember the kids going, oh, she's Valetti. So, oh, she's from England.
Right, right. So you kind of felt segregated there, basically. So you weren't exactly Indian and you weren't exactly kind of English.
That's it. So that sense of belonging, I actually thought, oh, I'm going to go to India. I'm going to feel like I'm with Indians, so I'll be fine. But no, even there was like, oh, you might think you're Indian, but you're not. You're English. You're from England, Valetti. And then in England, I was getting the P word said to me. So that was like quite interesting as well. That sense of belonging wasn't there.
You know, it's really weird though, because my dad wouldn't allow us to speak Punjabi to my mum. So my mum couldn't speak English, but he was very adamant that we wouldn't speak back to her in Punjabi. So I think for him, he didn't want us to have an accent. So he was just like, you know, your mum will speak to you in Punjabi, but you will actually speak to her in English, sort of thing. So it's really weird, isn't it? How we kind of all brought up in different ways and how to actually interact.
Yeah, I think my dad was completely the opposite. He was like, you know, you must speak in Punjabi. I'm not going to speak to you unless you speak in Punjabi to me, because you will forget how to speak it. And at the time, I was really frustrated. So to my mum, I'd speak in English, she'd speak to me in Punjabi. To my dad, we had to speak in Punjabi to him, and he would only speak in Punjabi to us. And I thought, do you know what? That's so frustrating. You're trying to control me, blah, blah, blah at the time. However, I am really grateful later in life that he did make us remember and remind us how to do it, because it's helped me in my older life. At the time, I found it restrictive.
Yeah, so for me, it was just like, you know, it was contradictory because my dad wanted us to break out the box by not speaking Punjabi. He wanted us to be free and to assimilate. But, you know, growing up as a teenager, I think that's when the box then started kind of amplified, as it were, and those restrictions became apparent. So I remember one time, it was really quite visual actually. So I was in the kitchen with my mum, and there was a risk at that time. I was growing into a teenager. So, you know, to be honest with you, I wasn't blossoming in the slightest. I actually had a moustache. I was hairy. I was not a great looking girl.
We Indian girls love our tashes, don't we?
We did. I wouldn't say I loved it, but I had it. So then, yeah, but even with the tash, there was still a risk of boys finding me attractive. I don't know where that logic came from, but there was that risk, yeah. So, but I remember mum kind of like being in the kitchen with her, and she just pulled out this chopping knife. You know, I don't know where she got this chopping knife. You normally have like normal kitchen knives. She had a full-on butcher's chopping knife, and she took it out, and she was like, if I see you talking to a boy, near a boy, or even like close to a boy, I'm going to chop you into pieces and I'm going to kill you. Yeah. And for me, like, my mum's like 4 foot something. She's not even a tall woman, but you know, you could tell she meant it.
And how did that affect you? Because that's quite a big thing, isn't it?
You know what? At the time, I kind of sort of felt it was normal, because I was just like, okay, well, I'm a Muslim girl. I'm the oldest girl. I've always had that fear from like, you don't speak to boys, you don't do this sort of thing. But for her, it was like cementing it. So I was just like, back within those 4 lines anyway, in that box. So for me, I was just like, okay, now these lines are more solid. So she was just cementing that box for me. So me, I was like, yeah, okay, you know, I get it. I've heard you, and I've heard you again, and I do not want to get chopped up. So then, yeah, because, you know, that woman, she makes some mean meat samosas, and I knew full well that she would execute me and deliver me in that way. Yeah, so there was like,
Yeah.
it was like, no. way I was stepping out of that box. So yeah, so for me that was the experience I had at secondary school, is kind of sort of,
Yeah.
really realizing that foundation of that box and the actual lines of that box, basically, that were getting thicker and more solid. And
Yeah.
and I was at the time I was still quite happy with it. I was like, yeah, alrighty, I still like this box. So
Yeah.
for me, I was still wearing Asian clothes. I was still being that good girl, and I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think I did the complete opposite. I was definitely like, I am not going to be in that box. I am going to break out of that box. I am not going to be listening. I'm going to be the rebel. So, that's what I was doing. I remember being at sixth form and all the girls were talking about at the time, they had those really thin eyebrows. Do you remember?
Oh, yeah. It was that Bollywood era, though, wasn't it?
It was.
Where the women had
like the thin arched eyebrows. And I was like, do you know what? I've got freaking hairy caterpillars sitting on my forehead. I am not going to continue to have those hairy caterpillars. I'm going to do something about it. I want to look good. I want to be fashionable. I am going to pluck my eyebrows. Yeah.
Go, girl. It was like empowerment at such a young age.
I know, right?
Go for it.
Yeah. So there I was, plucking my eyebrows, feeling very proud. Oh, yeah, they look fantastic. Yeah, I am going to be fashionable when I go to sixth form tomorrow. And go downstairs, chilling in the living room. My dad comes in, he's sitting over the other side of the room. He talks to me. We're like having a chat, and then suddenly he stops. And in my heart, I'm like, uh-oh, what's going on? And he comes closer. And he comes right up to me. He goes, Tere parvatiano ki hoya? What have you done to your eyebrows?
What the hell? I mean, it's so surprising that your dad even noticed your eyebrows. Men do not notice eyebrows. So, that was proper radar for your dad to actually zone into your eyebrows like that.
Man, he was a hawk, that man was. So he was looking at my eyebrows and he was like, Tenu pata kidan diyan timiyan idan de parvatte hunde ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ. Do you know what sort of women have eyebrows like that? Vesya. And I'm like, what is that term? I have no idea what that means. Mom, what does that mean? And she went, prostitute. And I'm like, what's a prostitute? But I knew it was what my dad thought would be derogatory to put me down term. And that was really like, wow, you are making such a big deal of a few little hairs, making my eyebrows into tiny caterpillars rather than huge hairy ones. And you're like making it into such a big deal and trying to use the term that you think is going to put me down and put me in my place.
Yeah, I mean, to call someone that, I think at any age, is quite a powerful word, to be honest with you. How did it actually make you feel at that time? How did it make you, I don't know, was your relationship with your dad any differently from there on?
I think it just sort of cemented that, do you know what? I'm not going to be able to do what I really want to do. It upset me, because when anybody's feeling like somebody's being derogatory or using any type of language which is derogatory, in his eyes it was derogatory towards me, and putting me down is how I felt, but also constrained that you can't do this and I'm going to name call you if you do something which is against what I want you to do. So that has a huge effect on us as children, doesn't it? We're in our tender years where we're taking on everything, and to be made to feel bad is not a great thing at that age, because like we talk about, our childhood experiences then stay with us when we're older as well and play out in different ways, which I know we're going to cover in a different episode. But yeah, it was hurtful, it was upsetting, and it made me realise, do you know what? I'm still going to do it, but I know where you're coming from now. It made me wary.
Yeah, that's like, I mean, it's quite sad to hear that at such a young age. So for me, I think, I don't know. I mean, thinking back at it, I was given probably a bit more freedom, or I felt you know, that's how I felt. Probably not. I was restrained, but I felt I had enough there to work with, even though I was kind of restrained in my box. But remember, I was happy in that box.
And you know, like I was saying to you about feeling like very much on the outside, did you have that feeling when you were at sixth form, or were included into with groups of people?
Yeah, you know, I felt totally at peace, and I felt included. I had a sense of belonging. So even when I was in my primary school or whatever, I had my sisters that we would go to, and, you know, we would go then have friends that we would group with. And at sixth form, we actually formed a V Posse, which actually stood the Virgin Posse. So this was literally a mix of Indian, Pakistani, Asian girls that just grouped together. And the reason why we grouped together was the fact that we knew we couldn't have boyfriends. We knew we couldn't talk to boys. We knew we couldn't actually befriend any boys. But we thought, you know what, we're going to work with that because we don't need boys. We don't need boys in our lives. You know, I think there must have been about six of us in this group, basically. And we loved having a laugh together. And we were like, we're going to go through sixth form as a V Posse, as this virgin posse. So they're not in a sexual way. It wasn't virgin as in losing our virginity.
Yeah.
It was just the fact that virgin in the sense, we don't need boys. We've never had a boyfriend.
Sounds like you were very empowered of females all together, working together there.
100%. You know, I loved it. We did everything together. We were opinionated. We were not suppressed in any shape or form. Yeah, you know, we were loud. We were boisterous. But you know, we knew full well that this was our restraint. Who cares? We're going to have a laugh anyway. But I have to admit, looking back at that, there were really good memories. It was like really great set of friends then. And you know, we all kind of just didn't have any contact with any boys, and we didn't need it. We honestly didn't need it to have a good time.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because actually having that strength as a group helped you to feel like you were working outside of the box in a way, because you weren't having to think about that constraint at all. You moved away from that constraint in a way, didn't you? Of thinking, oh, well, I can't have a boyfriend or this, that and the other. And it wasn't something that clearly entered your mind at the time. It was just about having a good time yourselves. Which I love.
Yeah.
But I was just going to say, for me, I felt like I wasn't allowed to have a good time. And so I might have had a bit of a good time, but if I got invited to parties or, you know, birthdays or, oh, come to this disco. And my dad would be like, "Doni kitte jana, tenu nahi pata kiddan de gore hunde a. You're not going anywhere. You don't know what white people are like. Oh, kiddan de kam karde a. What do they do? Tenu nahi pata, minu pata ya, or bade kharab ya. They're really bad." And I'm like thinking, and I said this to him, why have you come to England? Why are you living in England then? Why have you got white friends if you're telling me that I can't do these things and I can't be with these people and that they're going to have a bad impression on me? And in my head, I'm going, you're a hypocrite.
No.
Did you have any experiences of trips and going out and things like that?
Yeah, you know, it's funny, because I lived in an area that was probably at the time, it was probably like 70% like English and 30% kind of, you know, diverse. But I would always gravitate. I don't know why. I kind of gravitated to Asian girls. Maybe it's a familiarity thing. Maybe it's the fact that, you know, it felt safe.
Yeah, I can see that sense of belonging. Whereas, like for me, it was very much 99% predominantly white and very few Indian people. So, you know, my dad clearly saw that and thought, right, I don't want them to be English or white, as he thought about it. Yeah, very different experiences.
Yeah, totally. And I think it was more, I mean, my sister did. I mean, she literally only had white friends, you know, and she would gravitate toward the thing. I think it was just more of a personal thing. It wasn't something that my dad kind of stated was that you couldn't have English friends or you couldn't have, you know, different friends from different backgrounds. It's just what my personal preference was. And that's what it was. But, you know, that allowed me to actually just feel safe and have a good time. And even when you mentioned, was it the fact that we had a V Posse and that we kind of knew our limitations?
Yeah.
And trying to sort of break out of it. I don't think we kind of were breaking out of anything. I think we acknowledged it, we accepted it. And we just thought, you know what, let's just work within these constraints that we have, and let's just have a good time in this same box. So we still want to brain that and stay in the same box. But that didn't last forever. So us virgins are not virgins forever. Okay.
Well, yes.
All good things come to an end. All good things come to an end. Okay?
Or get better. Or get better. So I think what we need to really do, we've had such a really interesting discussion, haven't we, is really go on to have a reflection. What do you think? It would be really good to ask the same question at the end of each episode and think about taking a reflection and a takeaway from what we have talked about today. Z?
Yeah, I think it's a brilliant idea. Okay, what is that question? Ask away.
What advice would you give to your younger self at this age?
Yeah, that's interesting, actually.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I kind of sort of think, like, for me, like, listen to, if you feel something's off, you know, even if you're in a really traditional family like I was in a traditional family, but, you know, still had that freedom within those boxes. And I was the eldest girl and I was there to set example, but I knew when things weren't right. Yeah. And I knew when things were off. And I think listen to your instinct, be bold enough to question. You really got to question and challenge when something doesn't feel right.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. That listening and instincts comes from that awareness of signs in our own body. And when things don't feel right or they feel a bit off, listen to that feeling, be aware of that feeling when that feeling happens. If it's happening when somebody's saying or doing something, and be curious to ask why they're doing it. Because ultimately, is it something to do with them, how they're feeling about it? What's their underlying intent about it? Most importantly, what we've talked about here as well is to remember to love ourselves and to always know that actually, if you feel that you don't belong anywhere, you will always belong to yourself and care for yourself in the best way that you can in the circumstances that allow, and never let your voice to be taken from you. If it doesn't feel right, it isn't right.
Yeah, 100%. I think so. You know, this is such a great way to end the episode by reflecting on our experiences. Oh, deep breath there.
Definitely.
It is a great way to heal and to learn.
It sure
is.
This
has been brilliant.
Thanks for listening today. We would love it if you could click the subscribe button, add your comments and share it with as many people as you can who you think would enjoy our discussions and stories.
Oh, we would so love it if you could share your stories. You can email us anonymously or with your first name. Any stories about being in the box or getting out that box, our email is in the link below.
We can't wait for you to join us next time, where we'll be discussing venturing out of our family box and on to university. What happened? Were there more boxes? Join us to find out.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait for the next episode. I'm so excited.
We have so much to share with you.